You believe the lie that you're never going to get caught. And you make one compromise, which leads to another compromise. And next thing you know, you're so far down the road that you don't know how to find your way back.
Bill Renji was a typical teenager, just trying to fit in with the right crowd.
Like a lot of kids, I started caring more about what my friends thought about me. And I started listening more to my friends than I did my parents.
But the crowd he chose led him in the wrong direction.
Unfortunately, I was a follower and not a leader. We started getting into partying and drinking, drug experimentation.
By the time Bill was a senior in high school, he was a full-blown addict.
Went from smoking marijuana 8th grade freshman year in high school to the time when I was a senior, being involved in hardcore drugs and cocaine and crack cocaine and selling drugs to support my own habit.
2 weeks after his graduation, Bill went with a friend to a well-known drug house.
Just kind of drive through and get your drugs and then be on your way. We pulled in and this time it was clear that something was wrong. There was a drug bust underway. There was plainclothes undercover police officers running around. There was drug dealing suspects laying face down with their hands behind their head. This plainclothes undercover police officer came up to me from my driver's side window and in no uncertain terms told me to get out of the car, and he had a 9mm Glock drawn, pointed at my head from 3 feet away.
But when Bill floored the accelerator and tried to speed out of the driveway, their car nudged the police officer, causing his gun to fire.
And then I knew something was terribly wrong because I was unable to move anything from the chest down. That moment, I didn't know if I was going to live or die. But I knew enough to cry out to God. Even though I didn't have a relationship with him, I remember saying, please, God, don't let me go out like this. I don't want this to be the last memory that I leave behind for my parents or for my brothers.
Bill was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. The bullet had severed his spinal cord and lodged behind his right lung. It instantly rendered him a quadriplegic. His family learned of the accident and Bill's secret lifestyle on the same night.
When you're laying there in bed and you've been shot trying to buy drugs at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's no more lies left to be told. And so I had to confront that. I had to look at my parents in the eyes and tell them. I had to look at my brothers, and it was very difficult.
The consequences of Bill's decisions changed the course of his life forever.
Nobody grows up and says, hey, I want to be in a wheelchair. I want to be a quadriplegic or a paraplegic. I want to have a spinal cord injury. You have to accept what happened to you, and you go through denial, and then you go through, you do have a little bit of your pity party. It was a long process. I mean, I went through 4 months of very grueling inpatient rehabilitation and then about a year's worth of outpatient rehabilitation afterwards. I put myself in that position. I didn't have anybody else to blame but myself.
But one day, Bill saw a flyer that piqued his interest. It was an advertisement for a wheelchair rugby team.
At the time, I couldn't even push a wheelchair across the floor in the cafeteria at rehab. So I didn't know that I'd ever be able to compete in that. Well, this is something that that I want to give a shot to. And so I was 2 years post-injury and got involved in rugby and wasn't very good at first.
At first, Bill was on the bench, 14th on the depth chart out of 15 guys. But he made new friends, one of whom was a Christian.
He wasn't going out to bars and parties. He wasn't chasing girls around, and yet he had more peace within him than any of the guys that did. He would just share the Lord with me. He just, told me what Christ had done for him. That was a very important seed that was planted in my heart.
A few years later, Bill got together with an old friend who had become a Christian in prison. He invited Bill to church.
I had not accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior and asked, for total and complete forgiveness of my sins. So that was an eye-opening moment. And then right there in my seat where I was and accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. And instantly there was just this peace that came into my heart. And I knew I was different. I knew I was redeemed. I knew I was a changed being. And it was then that I knew, okay, this is what a relationship with Christ, with God feels like. He's not some distant being. He's not, somebody who's just, there, but he's real and he's a living God.
Bill went on to earn a bachelor's and master's degree. And with a newfound discipline and determination, he started to excel in rugby.
And by the time I was in my third, fourth, and fifth years, I was not only starting, but I was winning all tournament awards, at the various tournaments we're going to around the country.
Bill eventually made the national quad rugby team. He went on to compete in both the 1996 Atlanta Paralympic Games and the 2000 Sydney Paralympic Games. Both times, Bill and Team USA brought home the gold.
My entire family was there, my mom and dad, my brothers, and that was just awesome because it was almost validation for me. Somebody that was unable to even get out of bed to push a wheelchair was now able to compete for his country and win a gold medal. And, saying that national anthem, and when they put the gold medal around your neck, when you see your family cheering for you and realize, okay, God is at work and what he's doing in my life.
Today, Bill is married and has 3 children. He is also an inspirational speaker and ministers to teens around the country through the Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Going back to those first few days, first few weeks after my injury, if you would have played a DVD for me and said, this is what your life is going to be like for the next 24 years, I never would have believed it. I never thought I'd have a date again, let alone, be blessed with just this terrific, beautiful, godly woman that God's given me. And I never thought I'd be able to have kids and to have 3 wonderful children. It's been just such a blessing.
Bill has also written a book called A Chosen Bullet, to share with others about his accident, his adventures in rugby, and his relationship with Christ.
The message of my testimony is simply, God used a chosen bullet to redirect my path from one that was going down a road of tragedy and probably ultimately death and destruction to a road of triumph and redemption, and just really a life that far surpasses anything that I could ever have imagined.